Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen is the most misunderstood song in American rock history, and President Ronald Reagan proved it during his 1984 presidential campaign. These are 10 rock songs that millions of people have completely misunderstood, turning protest anthems into patriotic rallies, stalker ballads into wedding songs, and suicide contemplations into feel-good hits. What you think you know about these classics is probably wrong. Music has this strange power to hide dark truths behind catchy melodies. A song can sound like pure celebration while actually crying out in pain. It can masquerade as romance while describing obsession. And sometimes, the gap between what we hear and what artist actually meant grows so wide that even presidents get it wrong, especially when MTV music videos and radio play strip away lyrical context. In September 1984, President Ronald Reagan stood before a crowd in Hamilton, New Jersey, and declared that America's future rested in the hopeful message of songs by a man so many young Americans admired, Bruce Springsteen. Reagan was specifically referencing Born in the USA, which spent 7 weeks at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and which he apparently thought was a patriotic anthem, celebrating everything great about America. Bruce Springsteen was not amused. The boss quickly clarified that Reagan had completely missed the point, calling his hit the most misunderstood song since Louie Louie. Because Born in the USA isn't a celebration at all. It's a scathing criticism of post-Vietnam War America, where veterans faced serious economic hardships and PTSD that clashed with the glorification of war and patriotism. The song tells the story of a working-class man facing what Springsteen called a spiritual crisis, in which he is left lost. This character is isolated from his government, isolated from his job, isolated from his family, to the point where nothing makes sense. That upbeat musical arrangement and anthemic chorus masked lyrics about a veteran born into a dead man's town, sent to kill in a foreign land, and returning home to find no place for him in the country he served. Themes that would later be memorialized at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Reagan wasn't the only one who got it wrong. The president of Chrysler offered $12 million to license the song for car commercials, thinking it celebrated homegrown American greatness. Hard-right presidential candidate Pat Buchanan chose it as his entrance music at the 1999 Iowa straw poll, thanking Bruce Springsteen for that tremendous introduction. Even 40 years later, the irony persists. Sony reissued the album on translucent red vinyl in 2024 to mark its anniversary, and you can bet some people still think they're buying patriotic music. But Born in the USA isn't alone in being completely misinterpreted. Take Every Breath You Take by The Police, which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 8 weeks in 1983, and has somehow become one of the most popular wedding songs of all time. Couples slow dance to it, declare it their song, and apparently never listen past the romantic-sounding title that dominated MTV rotation. Sting himself has tried repeatedly to set the record straight. The song is very, very sinister and ugly, he told the BBC. People have actually misinterpreted it as being a gentle little love song when it's quite the opposite. He's described it as a nasty little song, really rather evil. It's about jealousy and surveillance and ownership. Those lyrics aren't about devoted love. They're about possessive stalking. Sting wrote the song during his divorce from his first wife, channeling the dark obsession of someone who refuses to let go. When he sings about watching every breath, every move, every step, he's not being romantic. He's being creepy. The fact that this Grammy Award-winning song became a wedding standard says something troubling about how we romanticize possessive behavior. Even more disturbing is how Every Breath You Take spawned an antidote. Sting later wrote, "If you love somebody, set them free," specifically to counter the toxic message of his earlier hit. But guess which one people remember for their wedding day? Sometimes the gap between perception and reality is literally life and death. The Smashing Pumpkins Today reached number 4 on Billboard's Alternative Songs chart in 1993 and sounds like the ultimate feel-good anthem. That driving beat, those soaring guitars, Billy Corgan singing about how today is the greatest day, it screams positivity and seizing the moment. Except Billy Corgan was contemplating suicide when he wrote it. He'd fallen into an 8-month depression after the band's first album, becoming what he called completely suicidal. for 2 or 3 months, struggling with the same post-traumatic stress disorder-like symptoms that Vietnam veterans faced decades earlier. That upbeat sound was intentionally ironic. As Corgan explained it, "I just thought it was funny to write a song that said, 'Today is the greatest day of your life because it can't get any worse.'" The darkness hiding behind that bright melody is almost unbearable when you know the truth. Colgan was so depressed he could barely write music, plagued by writer's block alongside his suicidal thoughts. Today wasn't celebrating anything. It was gallows humor from someone who had hit rock bottom and found twisted comfort in the idea that at least things couldn't get worse. Pearl Jam's Alive presents a similar contradiction. The song reached number 16 on Billboard's mainstream rock chart in 1991, and stadium crowds pump their fists and roar along when Eddie Vedder belts out, "I'm still alive," treating it like a triumphant declaration of survival and resilience. For decades, that's exactly what it became, but that's not what Eddie Vedder originally intended. The song tells a deeply personal story that Vedder revealed on VH1 Storytellers. A teenager learns two shocking truths. The man he thought was his father isn't, and his real father died years earlier without him knowing. The phrase, "I'm still alive," wasn't triumphant. It was a burden, a curse. As Vedder put it, all he knows is "I'm still alive." Those 3 words, that's totally out of burden. The original story gets even darker. Vedder wrote Alive as the first part of a trilogy. In the second song, Once, the confused teenager goes insane and starts killing people. In the third, Footsteps, he's sentenced to death and blames his mother. This was Vedder's Mama-Son trilogy, and Alive was supposed to be the tragic beginning of a descent into madness. But something beautiful happened. When millions of Pearl Jam fans began chanting, "I'm still alive" at concerts, they transformed the song's meaning. Their collective energy turned a mournful curse into a life-affirming anthem. Vedder himself acknowledged this transformation. When they changed the meaning of those words, they lifted the curse. Those fans literally saved the song from its own darkness. Not every misunderstood song gets such redemption. Foster the People's Pumped Up Kicks became a massive summer hit in 2010, peaking at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, with its whistled melody and indie pop bounce making it perfect for festivals, commercials, and feel-good playlists. Except the song is about a school shooting, written in the shadow of tragedies like the Columbine High School massacre in 1999. Mark Foster wrote it to explore the psychology of an isolated psychotic kid named Robert, who fantasizes about shooting up his school. Foster wanted to understand the mental illness and violence affecting young people, to get inside the head of someone capable of such horror. That upbeat musical arrangement was intentional. It reflected how detached and casual violence had become in American culture. The irony became painful as real school shootings continued to devastate communities. Radio stations pulled the song after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in December 2012. Foster discovered that Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz had it on his playlist before the February 2018 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. By 2019, Foster was seriously considering retiring the song entirely. "Where we're at now compared to where we were 10 years ago is just horrific," he told Billboard magazine. Foster never meant to glorify violence, quite the opposite. He wanted to start conversations about youth mental health and gun violence. But when your anti-violence song about school shootings becomes a party anthem, something has gone terribly wrong with how we process music and meaning. Third Eye Blind faced a similar problem with Semi-Charmed Life. This became the soundtrack to Summer 1997, a shiny guitar-driven hit that perfectly captured the optimism of youth. Radio loved it, MTV played it constantly, and it spent 43 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 4. Stephen Jenkins had a much blunter description. "It's a dirty, filthy song about snorting speed and getting blowjobs." That bright, shiny musicality was meant to contrast with lyrics about drug addiction and self-destruction. Jenkins designed the song to reflect the feeling of crystal meth, that temporary brightness that makes everything seem better before it all falls apart. Many radio stations caught on and edited out the line about crystal meth, but they kept playing the song as a feel-good hit. The deeper meaning, as Jenkins explained it, was about never being satisfied, always wanting something more, reaching backward to things you've lost and forward to things you can never get. It was a song about the fundamental emptiness underlying American consumer culture, disguised as a celebration of that same culture.
All my life, oh Lord.
Even when artists try to clarify their intentions, urban legends can prove stronger than truth. Phil Collins has spent decades explaining that In the Air Tonight is not about watching someone drown. That persistent myth claims Collins witnessed a drowning where someone close enough to help refused to save the victim, while Collins was too far away to intervene. It's a compelling story, made more believable by that ominous drum break and Collins' intense delivery of lines about not lending a hand if someone told him they were drowning. The legend became so widespread that Eminem referenced it in Stan, further cementing the false narrative in popular culture and giving it new life through hip-hop's knowledge graph connections. But the truth is far more personal and mundane. Collins wrote the song about his divorce from his first wife, working through anger, despair, and frustration. That drowning is metaphorical. It represents the pain of his marriage falling apart. Collins has repeatedly stated he's not even sure what the song means, just that he was working through a lot of dark emotions in a D minor key, which he called the saddest of all. Sometimes misunderstanding comes from assuming the most obvious interpretation must be correct. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, from the Beatles' 1967 album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, seemed like such an obvious reference to LSD that the theory became gospel among Beatles fans. John Lennon denied it repeatedly, but nobody believed him. The actual story is much more innocent and touching. Lennon's young son, Julian, came home from school with a drawing of a classmate named Lucy surrounded by stars. When John asked what it was, Julian said, "It's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds." Lennon thought it was beautiful and immediately wrote a song about it. "It never was about LSD, and nobody believes me," Lennon said in frustration to Rolling Stone magazine. This is the truth. But the timing of the song's 1967 release, amid the psychedelic explosion of the late 60s, made the drug interpretation irresistible. Sometimes the cultural moment is stronger than artistic intention. Green Day experienced this phenomenon with Good Riddance, Time of Your Life. That acoustic ballad reached #2 on Billboard's Modern Rock chart in 1997 and became a staple at high school graduations and proms. Seemingly perfect for marking life transitions and cherishing memories, students sang along to lyrics about hoping you had the time of your life, treating it as a sentimental farewell to good times. Billy Joe Armstrong had something much more bitter in mind. He originally titled it Good Riddance with Time of Your Life as a sarcastic subtitle. The song was his angry farewell to an ex-girlfriend who had dumped him and moved to South America. Those seemingly nostalgic lyrics were actually a pissed-off send-off, a middle finger disguised as a blessing. When Green Day learned their Grammy-nominated song had become popular at proms, they were genuinely surprised. The irony was perfect. High schoolers were using a breakup song about getting dumped as their graduation anthem. Sometimes the audience's interpretation becomes more powerful than the artist's intention. For better or worse. This pattern extends to protest songs that get conscripted for exactly what they're protesting. Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortunate Son reached #14 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1969, and was John Fogerty's clever criticism of the Vietnam War, specifically targeting the unfairness of wealthy people avoiding the draft while working-class kids died in jungles. The song wasn't anti-war as much as it was anti-inequality, calling out the sons of senators and millionaires who would never see combat. But Fortunate Son has become a staple in Vietnam War movies, often used to create nostalgic atmosphere rather than highlight the war's injustices. Self-proclaimed patriots have adopted it as a symbol of dedication to country, completely missing Fogerty's point about class privilege and unfair sacrifice. That song, meant to expose American hypocrisy, became part of American mythology. What makes these misunderstandings so persistent? Part of it is how music works on our brains. Catchy melodies and driving rhythms can overpower lyrical content, especially when songs become associated with specific memories or cultural moments. A song you first heard at a graduation will always feel like a graduation song, regardless of what the lyrics actually say. There's also the simple fact that most people don't listen closely to lyrics, especially in rock music where vocals often get buried in the mix or obscured by vocal styling. We catch a few key phrases, assume we understand the meaning, and let that interpretation solidify over years of casual listening. MTV's emphasis on visual storytelling often reinforced these misinterpretations through music videos that ignored lyrical content. Cultural context matters enormously. Songs released during specific historical moments get interpreted through those lenses, sometimes permanently. A song written about personal divorce becomes about national trauma. A critique of war becomes a celebration of soldiers. That gap between artistic intention and public reception can grow so wide that the original meaning gets lost entirely. Artists themselves contribute to the confusion. Some prefer to let listeners create their own meanings, rather than explaining their intentions. Others find that their songs' misinterpretations become more interesting or culturally significant than what they originally intended. Eddie Vedder embraced how fans transformed Alive from curse to celebration. Mark Foster struggles with whether to retire Pumped Up Kicks or let it continue sparking conversations about violence. These misunderstandings reveal something deeper about how art functions in society. Songs become bigger than their creators' intentions. They take on lives of their own, shaped by radio play, MTV rotation, cultural associations, and collective interpretation. A song's real meaning might be less important than what it comes to mean for its audience. But there's danger in this disconnect, especially with songs addressing serious social issues. When protest songs become patriotic anthems, their critical messages get neutered. When songs about violence become party music, their warnings get ignored. That transformation can be so complete that the songs end up promoting exactly what they were meant to critique. Bruce Springsteen captured this perfectly when he noted that records are often auditory Rorschach tests. We hear what we want to hear. Sometimes what we want to hear drowns out what artists desperately need us to understand. Sometimes the gap between sound and meaning becomes a chasm that swallows the artist's voice entirely. These 10 songs prove that in rock and roll, nothing is quite what it seems. The most patriotic-sounding anthems can be fierce protests. The most romantic ballads can be stalker manifestos. Those happiest pop songs can chronicle the darkest moments of human experience. And sometimes, the biggest Billboard hits are the most misunderstood songs of all. Next time you hear a familiar classic, maybe listen a little closer. You might discover that your favorite feel-good anthem is actually a cry for help, or that the song you thought was about love is really about obsession. In the world of rock music, the melody might be catchy, but the message is often more complex than you ever imagined.